Well, welcome everybody to the Jim and Jill podcast. Jill Stott and my
Yes.
colleague here.
My name's Jim Sparks, and we are going to talk about today. We're going to talk about transparency. So we're going to talk about.
Transparency.
I know
All
it's
right, Jim, what is
big scary
transparent?
word. It's a big scary word.
It is. It's so many syllables. How many is it? It's four whole syllables.
Yeah. I think the biggest problem is most people really don't understand it, and they don't really get how to apply it in their situation. So I mean, what does transparency mean to you?
I think for me, it's twofold. One, I'm all about work transparency. What are we
Mhm.
working on? What are we going to be working on? And what's our real progress? Just having that visible is huge. And the second aspect, I think, is open. I don't know. I want to say open and honesty within the psychological safety component. If I made a mistake, if I have a problem, I'm going to be transparent and open rather than hide it, hide it, hide it, hide it, hide it. If it's hidden, you can't fix it. You can't make anything better if you don't know about it. What about
Very
you?
true. I agree with you. I agree with that. I think a lot of it is basically just put it all out there. Everyone that's involved, your business owners, your stakeholders, your team, product owners, scrum, everybody within the organization needs to be transparent for it to be successful, I think. And to your point of psychological safety and trust, I think one side is transparent, the other side's transparent. That is a big component to how you
Mm.
build trust. Is the length you go to ensure transparency is very important.
Absolutely. In fact, that's a great thread I hadn't really thought about. That it's not just so much focuses on the team. We want to see your work, so the senior VP can make sure you're doing your job. But it's not always reciprocal. And it reminded
Mm-mm.
me of, okay, tell me if this is a bad analogy. I feel like a mushroom. I'm always in the dark and being fed BS or something like that.
Yeah,
Right? If the people are in the dark of what's really happening and how they're making decisions, it affects your organization's ability to be successful, I would have
it
to say.
does, and I think it really affects your trust level and your desire and motivation to really
Mm.
do the work that you're doing. Because if you don't know where you're going, if you don't know where your end product is, if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing for that organization, because you've been fed a line of BS or because they're not telling you, end game, why come to work? Most
Right.
people, they don't want to come punch keys and get a paycheck. They want some type of other thing involved. So
The purpose, autonomy,
yeah,
mastery, purpose. Yes. Well
I
said.
agree.
Well said. Well, do you have a story or an anecdote about transparency? Because I know you've worked with a lot of different Scrum teams.
I do actually. And this is what's when transparency goes bad. What happens when it goes wrong?
When it's opaque.
Um, yes, good word. Look at Jill with the big vocabulary lesson today. Awesome. The opposite of transparency is opacity. Very good. So for me, I mean, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. I know, Jesus. There's a lot of things that can go wrong when you're not transparent. One example that I've seen relatively recently is what is called a shadow backlog. You ever heard of a shadow backlog?
Oh, I haven't heard that
You
for a
have an
long
idea of what
time.
I'm
Yeah.
talking about?
Enlighten us.
So basically, a shadow backlog for us, we had the work the sprint team was working on. Obviously, the work in the product backlog moves into your sprint backlog. It's transparent, it's open, it's out there. We talk about it every day. We look at it on the Kanban board. Well, the shadow backlog was a collection of work that was also out there that needed to be done, but no one really knew exactly what it was, when it was going to come up, when it was going to pop into, being accountable for it. So the problem with that, the team was serving two masters. They were put in a position where they had to now serve
Mm.
the sprint backlog and this shadow backlog, which we never knew exactly when it was going to come up. And that's not fair to the team because it creates stress. It creates double accountability. It creates, well, who do I answer to? Do I answer to my product owner in the sprint backlog? Or am I going to go answer to my manager who says, well, this has to be done as well? And then I'm stressed out as a developer. I'm burnt out because I don't know I mean, it's a lot of unneeded stress because of the lack of transparency. And that degrades everything you've worked to build: trust, morale, and, happy team. And all of it just kind of starts to fall down.
That's interesting. And you think it's such a small little thing, but I mean,
Mhm.
eroding all of that. And then I can't, how do you prioritize stuff when it's in two different invisible
Yep.
backlog? It's impossible. So that's a great example. I really
And
like
that
that.
was one of the issues we ran into was, well, how do we prioritize the work that needs to be done? Because so one of the attempts we made was to try to somehow get it all involved into one backlog. And that way we could
Yep.
actually at least visualize it and prioritize it correctly. So
Perfect. 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 Yeah, I have a quick story. This is back
bring it
t-
on.
20 years ago. 20 years ago. And this still just every now and again, I just get so mad. So this was so we were doing. I do. I know. We were doing waterfall. We had this huge team, right? And then they're like, "Hey, we need a project manager." I don't even know what. I was a business analyst at the time, and so my boss was like, "Jill, you do it." Like, all right. What's a project manager? I don't know. This is before it was like a specific thing that people did. So we have the Gantt chart, right? That went out to several years and all the stuff scoped out, and then here's our date. We're going to deliver all the scope in this date. And it was very evident to me we are no way in Christmas going to make this date. So we had a weekly meeting where it was a status report essentially, and I had the product owner, product manager, a couple of senior VPs from business there, and I said, well, and I gave them the truth. I was transparent. Here's the situation. Here's what we have left to do. Here's our date. There's no way we'll be able to make this date, which was coming up like in the next 30 days. And they weren't happy, but I wanted them to know now so they could make changes and then communicate that back to our stakeholders and our customers. So I ended the meeting and I was like, high five to myself. And then my boss calls me, high five to me, calls me in and said, hey, and his boss wanted to talk with me. So he calls me. We'll call him Raul because that's on his name. So Raul calls me up. He's in the other building. And he says, hey, he heard about, apparently he didn't come to the meeting or he did. He said, you need to get everybody back together and tell them that that's not true. And I go, but Raul, it is true. I mean, and he wouldn't explain to me why. He says, we need you to do this, to change it and say, yes, I was wrong. We're going to make the
Wow.
date. And he strong armed me, and I'm like, okay. So I sent out an email or whatever. Here, we're going to make the date now. And then he's like, I need to have some more time. I need a few more weeks. And he's really weird about it. So anyway, come to find out through back resources that there was a significant bonus on the line for Raul. And it was time based. And if he had have not been able to make the date by then, he wouldn't get it. And he actually turned out he lives somewhat close to me, and so and here's another thing about Raul. Driving in, I would see him sometimes in his car. He was shaving. What's
He's
that?
one of those. Huh?
That's
One
too
of those.
transparent. So anyway, that's my story.
The benefits you've seen from working with transparency, from fostering that environment. What are the benefits you've seen?
So when did I go? Oh, back. This was maybe 15 years ago. We were doing Scrum, and prior to that, like I said, it was that waterfall environment, and we had the testers were always saying, or Jill was saying, we're not going to make the date, and like, don't be so negative. You're just being negative, and we never did. I mean, we missed it not by a few days, but by years at the beginning. So we started doing Scrum, and we were like, because every 6 months we had changed. Here's a new process based on the next boss that was hired on.
Let's
And we
throw
just,
a framework at the wall and see what sticks.
right, this is what I heard, and I'm going to hang my hat on it, so I'll get a promotion. And then this was as I was a tester. And then after a couple of months, when we had the data and the real progress, it was just in some, I can't remember what tool it was, DevTrack or something. Anyone can go and look at it. And it wasn't the testers or me saying, oh, we're not going to make the date. It was obvious. And I said, I kid you not, I go, oh, I think this Scrum thing's different. So there's me.
There you go. I think for me, one of the benefits was we ended up with an environment where there was trust, there was that psychological safety, and we had a roadmap, we had a vision of where we're going. And the way we got there, one of them, the POs that I've worked with, actually one of the best POs I've ever worked with, He was very adamant about being transparent with the business owners, with the leadership. He would let them know when we're hitting risks. He would let them know, I don't see us hitting this date because of this. And they would, surprisingly, they were very understanding. So that started to develop that relationship. They shifted priorities. They moved some things around. And the trickle down effect was we were actually able to focus on what was the most important and do away with some of the context switching, which everyone knows is bad for a team when you've got to constantly switch. One week you're working on this, one week you're working on this. So we were actually able to streamline that and help the teams focus, in addition to creating that psychological safety. So for us, the benefit of the transparency that our product owner was pushing was way more than just, everyone knowing what everyone's doing. So it was pretty phenomenal. It was fun for me as a scrum master to kind of sit back and watch how that grew and how it developed there. So that was a really cool thing.
That is a fantastic example of kind of going back to that transparency all the way up the chain.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's in a lot of the traditionally managed organizations, which there are a lot of them, then don't give me any bad news. And we tend to hide that, right? If you go,
Yep.
oh, I didn't make my day, and maybe that's why Raul was doing what he did. I don't know. Maybe they would have fired him. So maybe he wasn't such a bad guy. But if you can't live in reality, I will say, you can like fantasy
Shaving.
land, pretend world where like our strategies hope. That's so silly.
Yeah.
Like you're only
But he was
gonna.
shaving in his car on the way to work. He was kind of sketchy. I don't know.
That's true. See that I always come back to that. Like, where did all the little hairs go? I mean, what were you thinking there?
But
Anyhow,
no, I agree with you because it's not just about the team and what are we doing? What are we doing now?
yeah,
It has to go both ways. Trust is a two-way street. Transparency is
mm,
a two-way street. If you start to only go one way with it, you're gonna break down eventually.
I love
So I
that.
think it's a good example for other leadership, other organizations. When you get in there, you start, as a foundation of transparency and lead
Mm,
by example, it's going to filter up as well. And then they're going
yes,
to start to embrace that.
yes, I love that. It's culture, right? It's a culture
Mhm.
thing that transparency, and I just think when I grow up and become a CEO, if there's bad news, I want to know now. If you failed,
Mhm.
that's a great way to learn from that
Yeah.
fast. Let's tell everybody, hey, we went down this road, it didn't work. Cool,
Yeah.
right? Or instead of like the shame and we're not willing to try anything new. I think this is wow. But this could be an hour. Now that we're starting to talk about it, like it's so big, it's so important.
I totally agree. We don't have an hour scheduled
No, we
today. So
don't. We don't. We have jobs, I have a watch on.
what jobs? What?
I know.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Uh,
Oh,
yeah, we
back.
could go on for a while. So let me ask you this. In your course of your history,
I'm old.
can you think of
You just called
examples
me
when
old.
no, I did not. When teams or organizations were really resistant to that transparency, that work transparency.
Yes. Yes, I was. Yes, tons. Now, in fact, right now I'm working with somebody overtly where they're extremely resistant. And, and actually, I would love some thoughts on this. And a lot of it, I think, is
Mm-hmm.
fear of recrimination, fear of getting yelled at, fear of getting blamed. And I'm thinking, what's in it for the people at the very top? Why would they be reticent to transparent? I get why the people doing the work like me, because they've been yelled at for so many years, but why would the people up here? What are some thoughts? Unless they're being shady.
Well, I mean, there is that. Obviously, there's always that potential.
Oh,
People of in the industry in the world, basically, you work your way up, to CEO. You're in the C-suite. You're an executive somewhere. You've probably done some stuff that maybe you're not super proud of. I don't know, but
we see
so
that
you've
all the
gotten there. So you
time.
don't want
It's
that.
true.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want that on earth. Even if you are an ethical
Ah,
CEO that's managed to get there, you want to hold on to that. There's that fear of transparency of if I'm completely transparent and the blame solely lands on my shoulders, you know, maybe I'm going to be looked at as not such a hot shot CEO anymore. And someone's going to say, hey,
ooh.
we're going to come knocking on your corner office door.
You have someone to
So, I mean,
blame. Someone to blame.
yeah,
Oh my goodness
exactly.
gracious. That is spot on.
Yeah,
That is spot on. Now, to
I
be
agree.
honest, I even though I've worked the C-suites, I can't fix them. I just can't.
Nope.
I can do my best. I can give them some guidance, but Do you have any advice for your teams who they are like maybe they're new to this whole idea? Like, what? All my stuff's going to be exposed. What are some any thoughts you could parting thoughts?
Think about that's funny. Think about your kids. And I relate everything I do to my kids. So think about when you lie to your kids when they're like 7, 8 years old. They remember everything. They could go back 4 years when they were 3 or 4 years old and they'll remember every word I said. So if you're going to lie, if you're going to be non-transparent or opaque, as we learned today, um, it's going to come back to get you. There's always going to be in the back of your head that threat of, well, I wasn't completely transparent. What's going to come up to bite me now? Be transparent because it reduces the stress as you move forward. That's one thing for me is if you just put it on the table and you say, look, we're not going to make that deadline. We got to push our launch by at least a month. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. It's now a business decision. You've been honest. You've been open. You've put it out there. You've been transparent. Now it's a business decision. It's off your plate. Let them decide. Do we push the launch? Do we sacrifice something else? Do we, maybe we launch with a little bit less than we originally wanted to? But either way, you're going to do the best you can and it's off your plate. Johnny always remembers when you told him you didn't eat his Oreos. It was your little sister. No, it wasn't. She can't reach them, Dad. They always remember. So.
That is so true. And I love that. I'm thinking like, or suppose I'm a I don't know, I'm a contributor and it's like, oh, what if they see my stuff, my team does, and they think I'm not pulling my weight? And that adds to your backlog of stress.
It does.
They're going to find
It
out.
does.
They're going to find out. They're going to find out. Put it out there. It's freeing. Freeing.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
I'm a
Yes.
big proponent of that with our teams,
Oh, that's
put it out there. Let the
yeah.
product owner make the decision.
Yeah.
Let the product owner explain it to the stakeholders and let them make the decision. You can only do so much.
Yeah.
My mom used to say, you can't get blood out of a turnip. Well, you know what? You can only do so much. So
I like that. And just, it is what it is. Here it is.
Mhm.
And you won't necessarily have to judge each other. And if we do, let's do it now. I like that. So I don't have to like stay up at nights and miss my favorite TV shows worrying about it. Well done.
There we go. TV shows.
All right. You've heard it here today.
Yes.
Jill and Jim. And
Yes.
transparency, why it's important, why we tend to resist it. And what was that third thing?
Lying about Oreos with your kids. I don't know. Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Put them on the table. Be honest. Reduce your stress load as you go forward because now it's a weight off your shoulders. You
Okay.
can go forward. You've been
Sorry to
free.
interrupt you. I have to, I feel compelled to get something off my shoulders.
Okay.
I once ate an entire sleeve of Oreos by myself. That felt so
You
good.
feel better now? So
I
my
do.
question to you, in the Oreo pack, there's 3 lines.
Right.
Did you eat all 3?
No,
The
just
whole
one
pack?
sleeve
Just one?
and maybe a
Okay.
couple from the second. I call that a sleeve. I guess it's not a sleeve, a roll. Or is it a
Hey,
column?
I'm not judging. I'm not judging. I'm just asking questions for others to judge you on. See what you did with your transparency, Jill?
That was good. That was good. That's that could be a whole nother podcast. All right,
I
Jim,
know.
take us home. Back to you, Jim. I have to look this way.
Awesome. Hey, we appreciate your time. We appreciate you jumping in here, listening to us ramble for a little bit. If you like this, hang out. We'll be back again, probably before May 2nd of 2023. So keep your eyes out. We do like to do this. This is fun. If you have thoughts of something you want to hear us ramble about, hit us up. We're always open to new ideas.